Good afternoon, and pursuant to Standing Orders 1082 and 814 and the motion adopted by the committee on February 16, 2017, the committee will now commence its studies on the main estimates 2017-18, votes 1, 5, and 10 under Department of Citizenship and Immigration, and vote 1 under Immigration and Refugee Board. The subject matter of the Supplementary Estimate C 2016-17, votes 1C, 5C, 7C, and 10C under Department of Citizenship and Immigration, and vote 1C under Immigration and Refugee Board and the updated mandate letter of the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. I will now call vote 1 under Department of Citizenship and Immigration and introduce our witnesses. I'd like to, first of all, welcome the new minister to our committee. We look forward to working closely with you in the coming year, Minister. Minister, the Honourable Ahmed Hussein.
Just a point of order, Chairman. Normally, and this is addressed to the minister, normally in the past, we have separate meetings for the supplementary estimates and the main estimates. That's with particularly the former minister's practice, and any minister that I've seen appear. So I quite frankly would hope that the minister would be prepared to, and the supplementary estimates don't need to, or the main estimates don't need to be reported to the House until the end of May. So I guess the question, Mr. Chairman, through you, whether or not the minister would be prepared to appear in May on the main estimates and have this meeting specifically for the supplementary estimates and the letter.
Point of order, Mr.
Well, no, it's my point of order. You have to wait until your turn.
Well, point of order doesn't go into questioning
a witness. Yeah, it's my point of order.
Well,
you can't interrupt my point of order.
Mr. Chair.
Minister?
Just 1 second, please. So, Mr. Tilson, in response to your question as to scheduling, you're quite right. Certain ministers in the past have scheduled separate meetings. As the chair, I do have the discretion to schedule meetings and the agendas for the meeting, and working with the minister's office and their schedules, we found that this was the best opportunity to be able to bring the minister before the committee to address all of the issues that committee members wish to question the minister on.
Well, Mr. Chairman, on February 27th, there were minutes where it was agreed by this committee that the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship be invited to appear on the ministerial mandate letter as well as the supplementary estimates, and that the appearance take place forthwith. There was no mention of the main estimates. And so, quite frankly, we're combining a whole bunch of things into one meeting, and I think it's more appropriate that the minister, if he's prepared to meet, and hopefully he would, appear in May for the main estimates.
Thank you. As I said, Mr. Tilson, the chair does have the discretion to set the agendas for meetings, and I'm sure the minister, depending on availability, will be happy to come before the committee on various issues. But right now, this is how we've scheduled the meeting for today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the minister be invited to appear to the main estimates in May, in the early part of May.
So, unfortunately, you cannot move a motion on a point of order, Mr. Tilson.
Oh, the point of order is over. I'm now making a motion.
doesn't have the
You've
floor.
ruled on the point of order, Mr. Chairman,
So,
and I
yes.
accept that, but now
Okay, thank you.
I'm making a motion.
So, and Mr. Tilson, you'll have to wait until you have the floor, but at this point
I
in
have the
time, you
floor
do-
now, Mr. Chairman.
It was based on your point of order.
Well, no, you've stopped, you've ruled on the point of order. I now have the floor, and I'm so making a motion.
So, Mr. Tilson, I have ruled on this, and if you'd like to challenge my ruling, it is your prerogative, but I've ruled on this, and we will continue with the meeting.
So the ruling is that I'm not allowed to make the motion?
You do not have the floor at this time. When you do have the floor, it's up to you to proceed as you wish. But at this point in time, I've made my ruling. If you'd like to challenge the ruling, you're free to do so. But the meeting will continue.
Well, it's going to be an interesting day, Mr. Chairman. I'll wait.
Thank you, Mr. Tilson. So, as I was saying, we have before us the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, the Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. We also have from the department Richard Wex, the Associate Deputy Minister, Daniel Mills, the Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer, Finance, Mr. Robert Orr, Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations, Don Edlund, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations, Paul McKinnon, the Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy, and David Manicom, the Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy. And the floor is now yours, Minister, for your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm very pleased to appear before the Standing Committee for the first time today. It's a great honor and privilege to serve as Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and I look forward to working with all committee members on fulfilling this important responsibility entrusted to me. As someone who has gone through the immigration system, this file has a very personal significance to me. I'm extremely proud of our country's history as a place of freedom and asylum. In the Prime Minister's mandate letter to me, he indicated that our immigration and refugee policies should reflect the open, accepting, and generous qualities of Canadians. I want to assure committee members that I take this commitment very seriously. And as I fulfill my duties in welcoming those who want to contribute to our country's success, I promise to also uphold our proud tradition of openness. In doing so, we will remain a compassionate society, and immigration will continue to play a meaningful role in our country's prosperity and future success. In recognition of immigration's important role in our country's economic growth and future, one of the priorities identified in my mandate letter is to ensure the effective implementation of Canada's increased annual immigration levels. In achieving these immigration levels, it is also a priority in my mandate letter to reduce application processing times and improve the department's services to our clients. In doing so, we aim to make application processes less complicated and more timely for all applicants. The government appreciates the Standing Committee's work in this regard, and I wish to thank the committee members for their study on client service. The government will take into consideration its recommendations as we work to improve our services for our clients. As the committee members are aware, our immigration plan for 2017 will maintain the historically high levels from the previous year. A target of 300,000 new permanent residents. This represents the highest number of projected admissions put forth by the Government of Canada in modern times. Following Canada's response to the Syrian refugee crisis, another priority identified in my mandate letter is the important work in resettling the Syrian refugee population. To date, since our initial commitment to resettle these refugees in December 2015, Canada has resettled more than 40,000 Syrian refugees. And our continued focus is on helping these Syrian refugees integrate and succeed in Canada. The government will continue to work with provinces and territories, service providers, community groups, and partners to help these newcomers improve their official language skills, find employment, build a social network, and establish other vital connections in order to participate in all facets of Canadian life. Indeed, the government wants to ensure that all newcomers, not just refugees, are given the best possible chance to succeed and become fully participating members of our society. That is why another key priority in my mandate is to work with provinces and territories to renew our focus on delivering high-quality settlement services. We will employ a rigorous approach to our data to accurately measure newcomer outcomes. This will help us to determine whether our settlement services are responding effectively to the needs of newcomers and will enable us to make improvements accordingly. The government is also committed to advancing the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which includes changes to the Citizenship Act and the Oath of Citizenship. To that end, I will work with my colleague, the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, and expect to bring forward legislation to modify the oath in the coming months. Mr. Chair, I appreciate this opportunity to outline some of the priorities identified in my department's mandate letter. As I've said, I look forward to working with the committee members as we fulfill these commitments and support our ultimate shared goal, which is to ensure that our immigration system best supports newcomers and Canadians. In support of our commitments, I'm pleased to present to the committee today some of the highlights of my department's supplementary estimate C for 2016 and 2017, and the main estimates for 2017-2018. With respect to the supplementary estimate C, the most significant allocation is a $33.2 million for the Canada-Quebec Accord on Immigration, which is an increase compared to previous years. As this committee is aware, under this accord, the Government of Quebec maintains responsibility for immigrant settlement and integration services in return for an annual grant. The grant amount is calculated using a year-over-year escalator, which has two variables: the total increase in federal expenditures and the number of non-Francophone immigrants that settle in Quebec. Mr. Chair, another increase in these estimates is $10 million in additional funding for the interim federal health program, which was fully reinstated on April 1st, 2016. As you know, Mr. Chair, the interim federal health program provides limited temporary health coverage to resettled refugees, asylum seekers, and other groups until they are eligible for provincial or territorial provincial healthcare plans. One of the primary cost drivers of the program is the number of asylum claimants that enter Canada each year, which is simply not foreseeable. The department is also seeking $6.9 million in additional funding to support our increased levels for immigration. This funding will enable us to ramp up our operations here at home and abroad in order to meet the new admissions target of 300,000 immigrants in 2017. Mr. Chair, for 2017-2018, our department's main estimates of $1.6 billion represents a net decrease of $3.9 million from the previous year. This decrease is mainly due to the sunsetting of several projects, as well as program transfers to other departments. For example, as this committee is well aware, Canada's response to the Syrian refugee crisis was an exceptional circumstance that required a designated level of funding. This resulted in an $80.1 million decrease in our annual budget for 2017-2018. Among other decreases for this year is funding for the electronic travel authorization. As the ETA was successfully implemented in November 2016, this resulted in another $8.7 million reduction in our annual budget. With respect to our funding increases for 2017-2018, among the largest allocations are the following. We will require $33.5 million in 2017-2018 to resettle 10,000 additional government-supported Syrian refugees. Under the Canada-Quebec Accord, the Government of Canada will require $33.2 million for this fiscal year. We will also require $18.1 million to support an increase in the immigration levels plan related to the settlement program. Mr. Chair, since I already spoke to many of these initiatives, I would now like to focus on some of the remaining initiatives in our main estimates. As you know, biometrics are an important tool to verify the identity of individuals, and they strengthen Canada's immigration system in the process. Building on the success of the temporary resident biometrics project, to expand biometric screening to all visa-required travelers, this year, IRCC will require a $15.4 million increase in funding. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship is also seeking $4.4 million in 2017-2018 to support the removal of the visa requirements for citizens of Mexico. The government is very pleased that the visa lifting has already resulted in more Mexican travelers to Canada since we removed the visa on December 1st, 2016. Within the first month of the visa lifting, the number of trips to Canada by Mexicans almost tripled. The December volumes represent almost double those seen in December 2015. While this is good for our bilateral relations with Mexico and our country's economy, we also recognize that there is some level of risk involved, as is the case with any visa lift. This is why we continue to monitor migration trends, including the number of asylum claims from Mexico. Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada is committed to ensuring the success of our immigration system. We want to make sure that our immigration system meets the needs of newcomers and that it best serves the interests of all Canadians. We must be welcoming to those who wish to help our country, to build our country and help us succeed. At the same time, we must ensure the safety and security and health of all Canadians, and that remains paramount, and that we maintain the integrity of our immigration system. The estimates we are discussing today will help us to meet these goals. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would be now happy to answer any questions that committee members may have.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Tabari, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here in front of the committee today, and I congratulate you on your new role. I just want to mention in your statement here, I'm just going to read back what you said. Reduce application for processing time, improve department services to our clients, and less complicate and more timely for all applicants in applications. I would like to focus on the global skills strategy, which is a part of the department's priorities. I'm from the Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo area, and many of the high-tech companies as well universities rely on attracting global talent. Just to give you a little bit of figures about the high-tech sector, this is stats from 2015. There's 1,845 new technology startups has formed, raising $650 million in investment in a region just over 500,000. So I've sat with a lot of officials in Communitech and around the high-tech sector, and their main issue was about getting global talent and about getting these skills in our region that is expanding rapidly, but without getting this talent, we won't be able to further expand and get that talent and knowledge. So could you elaborate on how the global skills strategy will benefit Canada in terms of access to global talent, and what positive outcomes do you see as a result?
Thank you. It's a really important question. As you know, Canadian workers and Canadian companies have some of the best skilled workers in the world who are already here. But in addition to that, for their future growth and their development and their innovation, they always look to, in addition to hiring Canadians, sometimes they need to attract the best and the brightest from the world. And those folks actually, in addition to them coming and having a job with the Canadian company, in turn create jobs for Canadians. And so it's important in the global race for talent for Canada to be well positioned in that race and to continue to have mechanisms in place to facilitate the attraction and retention of that talent. And global skills strategy is the exact mechanism that we need to make it easier for companies that are desperate for that global talent to be able to get them to Canada quickly. So as part of the global skills strategy, we're setting an ambitious 2-week standard for processing visas and work permits for low-risk, high-skilled talent. In addition, the department will develop a dedicated service channel to help meet the foreign talent needs of companies seeking to make a significant investment in Canada. We also, in addition to that, we also plan to introduce a new work permit exemption for very short duration work terms, 30 days or less, and this will help sectors such as university-based research sectors to attract people on a temporary basis to enable them to get here quickly, assist the university or the company with the work that needs to be done, and then go back to their original country.
You kind of touched on my second question, which is when I sat down with these officials, they said that it's very complicated and timely to process an application to get this global talent here. What they've mentioned in these roundtables is that if they're trying to get a top official in the high-tech sector in Singapore or in Eastern Asia, a lot of times it's taking too long to process their application, and they're being grabbed by other areas, whether it's Australia, whether it's the UK. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the 2-week standard for processing visas, and how will that be achieved, and how that will benefit?
So before I get into that, I'll talk about the overall strategy behind this initiative. It's to facilitate not just faster processing for global talent, but more predictable processing, so that companies can know what the application process is like and have more predictability to the process. And the 2-week standard is what it is. It is a goal to have that ambitious 2-week standard for processing the visas and the work permits for low-risk, high-skilled workers. And I can have
Sure, we can. Thanks, Minister. I'll, just by way of introduction, I'll say a couple of words, but I think Mr. Manicom can fill out the details. As the Minister said, the Global Skills Strategy is aligned with the government's innovation agenda. There are a number of elements in the Global Skills Strategy that are intended to spur innovation, spur development, and spur employment. The details, the exact details, are being worked out right now between officials and various stakeholders in terms of which professions, under what circumstances. But the 3 key elements with respect to the 2-week standard, the dedicated service to help firms trying to scale up, and the new work permit exemption for short-term stays are the key elements of the Global Skills Strategy. The further details, as I mentioned, will be crafted over the coming months with key stakeholders. With that, Mr. Manicom, if there's any further details you'd like to provide.
I think my minister and Mr. Wex have covered most of it. We've been in very intensive consultations across the country, including in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor. I was in British Columbia last week at BC Tech, the big fair there. We are designing a package of proposals that we hope to implement in June. And at that time, we do indeed intend that all high-skilled, low-risk work permits will be done within 2 weeks as one of the key services. The whole objective here is to make sure that when companies need to grow talent or invest in Canada, access to the skills they need is not an obstacle, and that we therefore can grow these sectors in Canada, attract investment, and permit the upscaling that we need.
30 seconds.
I guess I wouldn't be able to get into my last question, but that's exactly what I was. It's great to hear that, because this is something I can send back to my constituents who are looking for this global talent, and to have that 2-week period, I think will be very a positive thing, and it'll be very well accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson.
Thank you, Mr.
7
Chairman.
minutes, please.
I would move, Mr. Chairman, that the minister be required to appear in the month of May to answer questions with respect to the main estimates for the reasons I've given, and I would ask for a recorded vote.
Mr. Tilson, we are currently studying the main estimates. We've heard an opening statements, questions, and since your motion deals with something that is currently underway, I'm ruling that it's not in order at this time.
I would challenge the chair.
The motion is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Zahid. Mr. Tabara.
Yes.
Mr. Sarai.
Yes.
Ms. Zerwich.
Yes.
Mr. Ananda Sangari.
Yes.
Ms. Rumpel.
No.
Mr. Soroya?
No.
Mr. Tilson?
No.
Ms. Kwan?
No.
5 to 4.
Thank you. So the decision is sustained.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Rempel will have the questions now.
Thank you.
How many government-assisted refugees have been admitted since November 2015? And of that cohort, how many have found full-time employment?
Before I answer specifically on the numbers, and
Actually, I only have 6 minutes, so are you able to provide
will-
the committee with a specific number
I've
right
heard your
now?
question. If you can let me answer, I would appreciate that. Thank you. I will defer to Don Edlin to speak about the specific numbers of landed government-assisted refugees, but I will comment on the issue of jobs from our analysis and our
I
data.
actually don't have enough time. How many refugees
Like
have
I
been
said,
admitted since
I have
November
heard your
2015?
question. You don't need
and
to
how
repeat
many
your
have
question.
found jobs?
I'm happy to answer if you let me. On the issue of employment, our analysis indicates that the employment figures and the employment pace for government-assisted refugees within the Syrian refugee cohort is precisely the same as previous waves of refugees. They tend to take a little bit longer than privately sponsored
Thank
refugees.
you. I asked you
And
for
so,
specific numbers.
If I
How
can
many?
finish my
no,
answer,
I would actually like
really
an answer to my
appreciate that.
question. How many
I am
of the
trying
Syrian
to answer
refugee
your question.
cohort
I
have
really
found a job?
appreciate if you give me the time to answer
I
your
would like
question.
a specific number,
And
not
I'm
your
trying
answer
to
to this
answer your
question.
question, so-
While you're not doing an appropriate job of it.
I would ask of the committee members, we do try to maintain decorum, so it makes it very difficult to answer questions with interruptions.
So, point of order, Mr. Chair, on that point.
Yes.
I do appreciate that the minister is trying to talk the clock out on this particular issue. I have asked him a very specific question because we're dealing with supplementary estimates. My question pertains to numbers because I want to figure out if the budgetary estimate that they've included in here accurately covers the cost of the cohort that they're bringing in. Within the supplementary estimates, there's another 10,000 refugees that they want to admit. There's a budgetary estimate of $33 million for the same. If the minister cannot tell the committee how many refugees have come in and how many have found jobs, it is difficult for the committee to evaluate whether or not the budgetary estimate is adequate. So I would appreciate, on the point of decorum, the minister answering my question, which is a technical number of how many refugees have come into the country and how many have found employment. Thank you.
Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the question. As I was saying earlier, we have definitely met our target of 25,000 government-assisted refugees to resettle them in Canada for the Syrian refugee cohort. And in terms of the number of government-assisted refugees that have found employment, it's 10% for government-assisted refugees. It's much higher for privately sponsored refugees. The number is about 53%. And that is per course, because in previous waves of refugees, we've seen the same trends, but over a number of years, the two actually converge, and you have the same amounts of rates of employment for both.
Thank you. So
waves
by your
of
numbers,
refugees.
22,500 Syrian refugees have not yet found full-time employment, and many of those will see their month 13 funding running out. What is the total anticipated cost of social assistance payments over the next fiscal year related to the 22,500 refugees that have not found full-time employment?
So, as I said earlier, for government-assisted refugees, the percentage of employment tends to be lower than privately sponsored refugees. That is because they tend to be more vulnerable. And
point of order, Mr. Chair, just so I don't get in trouble for decorum again. I asked a very technical question because, again, we're evaluating the supplementary estimates which deal with budgetary measures. I realize that the minister would like to provide some talking points on why he can't provide this answer, but again, I'd like to be able to evaluate whether the budgetary estimates are adequate. So, Mr. Chair, I would encourage, or perhaps ask you through you, that the minister provides the committee with the technical answer that I just asked.
Minister, if
just
you
as a
could
point of clarification, the 10,000 refugees that the honourable member refers to is from 2016. We're not admitting an additional 10,000 government-assisted Syrian refugees. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
So I will restate my question, Mr. Chair. Of the 22,500 refugees that have not found full-time employment, what is the total anticipated cost in terms of social assistance payments that will be required to support the 22,500 that are not employed?
In terms of the month 13 question, it's common for government-assisted refugees to lose their income support after the first year of support by the federal government. The responsibility after that falls to the provincial government in
So
terms
there's no
of
answer
social.
for that.
I'm trying to answer the question, Mr. Chair. I would appreciate not getting interrupted. The government-assisted refugees do have access to social services. In addition to that, these are permanent residents of Canada. They have
Thank you,
access
Mr. Chair.
to
I'll
other
proceed to my next
supports.
question. My next question relates to the Canada Gazette.
They have other supports,
In,
including the Canada
March-
Child Benefit, that they use to
Thank you,
help
Mr.
their
Chair.
family and their children.
Order. Ms. Rimpel, please proceed with your next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Canada Gazette posted a statement that the net cost to Canadians of lifting the Mexican visa initiative will be $261.9 million. Why has the government proceeded with lifting the Mexican visa in light of this particular piece of information?
Thank you for the question. I will defer to my officials for the answer.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chair, the member is correct that the net monetized cost for the lift of the visa, net of the costs and the benefits, is $260 million over 10 years. However, those are the quantified costs.
Thank you.
And if I could just complete, there are additional,
I only have a minute.
There are additional benefits that have not yet been quantified.
With regard to the supplementary estimates, $13 million have been allocated for the lifting of the Mexican visa requirements. Was this figure included in the $261.9 million that was quantified in the Canada Gazette?
In terms of the supplementary estimates and the mains, the costs, I believe, were $4 million and $1.3 million. Those operational costs are for increased traveler screening, increased processing of eligibility claims for asylum seekers, and interim federal health benefits. And to answer the member's question, yes, they were included in the costs.
Thank you.
You'll have 40 seconds.
With regard to that, can the minister please provide an estimate at the cost differential between one government-assisted refugee from the Syrian cohort and one privately sponsored? Actually, no. Better question. This year, how many of the additional cohort that are coming in for government-sponsored refugees, how many of those will be LGBTQ from Iran, Yazidi refugees, or persecuted ethnic and religious minorities?
You've asked three questions, so I don't know which one is more of a priority. So I'll just go down the list.
Proceed one question
at a
In
time.
terms
of LGBTQ2 community, we work very closely with the UNHCR, with private sponsors, with other stakeholders to make sure we identify vulnerable populations to be resettled in Canada. That obviously includes members of the LGBTQ2 community, and we continue to do that. We have a policy of vulnerability as a check, and obviously membership.
So with the 5 seconds I have remaining, would it be correct to assert that the government has not set a target for LGBTQ communities?
Unfortunately, time has run out for this round of questions. And we'll proceed to Ms. Kwan. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Minister and his staff for being here today, and congratulations to the Minister on his appointment. I'll first ask a quick question. Cessation claims, I'm sure the Ministers know what they are. Your predecessor, the former Minister McCallum, actually agreed at this committee that the government will be bringing legislation to address that issue. I'm asking a quick question from the Minister whether or not that commitment is still on the table.
The work on everything related to asylum, including cessation, is under review, and I'm happy to look at that. If all the commitments that the previous minister made are still a priority for me, including looking at cessation.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a quick question on legacy claims.
Yes.
The chair of the IRB, Mario Dion, said, and I quote, "The IRB had reallocated available internal funding to reduce the backlog of legacy cases from 32,000 to 6,500 since the since coming into force of the new refugee system. In 2016-17, the board's ability to reallocate funding internally will be severely limited, end quote. He went on to say, quote, as a result, commitments made by the board in relation to refugee protection claims that are not subject to statutory timeframes, such as the remaining 6,500 legacy claims, will have to be revisited unless additional temporary funding is made available, end quote. I see nothing in the supplementary estimates to support legacy claims to process, and I don't see anything specific with respect to the main estimates in terms of proceeding with dealing with the specific backlog. There's a huge backlog. The minister knows about that as well. So I wonder, how will this be dealt with, and will there be additional funding so that people are not in limbo? Their lives are literally in limbo. A quick answer, if I may, because I have one other area I want to get into.
Okay. Very quickly, the department has been working with the board. As you know, the board is independent, but we've been working very closely with them to address the issues around backlogs and specifically the legacy cases. They have implemented some efficiencies to make sure that they address the backlog. However, that has somewhat been hindered by the increase in asylum claims this year.
Yes. So my question is this: is there additional dollars allocated to it? Their problem is, as is stated by the chair, unless if there are additional resources made available to them, they can't deal with it. That's the reality. Right. They will do efficiencies and do all of this stuff as best as they can, but the reality is they don't have enough resources to process these claims. Will there be additional resources? As yes or no would be great.
Right. I think the approach should be efficiencies plus extra resources. I don't think this is just an exclusively resource issue.
And they're doing additional. They're doing efficiencies. So my question to you, Minister, is that will there additional dollars?
We are always happy to look at their request for more resources.
No, will there be additional dollars?
I can't commit to that at this current time. What I can tell you is that any request from the IRB for extra resources will be considered by my department.
Okay. I take it no, because so far there hasn't been. I'll look very carefully with this year's budget, the coming budget that's going to come down on Wednesday, whether or not there will be additional allocations. Because if there isn't, those cases are just going to be stuck and people's lives are on hold. And the minister, I know, understands that. I'd like to move on to Safe Third Country Agreement. I know that the minister falls back on the notion that UNHCR says everything is all cool, but in reality, things are not so cool, and the minister knows that as well, because the border communities are struggling. The premier himself in Manitoba has raised the issue in terms of the need for additional resources to deal with the situation. The minister himself acknowledged that there are additional claims coming through, and so therefore it creates a further backlog with the legacy claims. So my question to the minister then, on this, his insistence on refusing to suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement, I believe is wrong. Will the minister reconsider this, given the fact that Harvard has issued a report on this, given that there are some 200 law students who's issued a report on this, given that Amnesty International has interviewed some 30 individuals who's crossed over, and they all said that it was not their intention to come to Canada until Trump. So there is a real impact with what's happening to Canada. And so my question to the minister is, will he reconsider suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement so that people will go through the front door instead of back door, so that there can be order with respect to those who are seeking safety?
As you know, the issue of your assertion that we should eliminate the Safe Third Country Agreement to have order is actually the opposite. If we eliminate that agreement or suspend it, we will have disorder. That agreement allows us, between Canada and the United States, to orderly handle asylum claims.
Well, with all due respect, Minister,
okay.
if I may, with all due respect, though, the reality is this: when people go through a border, they actually can do this legally and go through it if the Safe Third Country Agreement is suspended. But right now, they're being forced to go through illegal channels, to go to the unsanctioned borders to do this, and they're risking life and limb in order to do this, Minister. So if you think that's order, I really have to really question, really in your mind, what is order, because that troubles me greatly,
What I'm relying on
Minister.
is our review. We review this agreement constantly, and we have an obligation to do that. And from our analysis, the U.S. domestic asylum system is fair, it has due process, and therefore the agreement applies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I know, but that's the minister's opinion. But the reality on the ground is something very different. And the people on the ground is telling the minister and telling everyone else who cares to listen that is very different. They're not trekking through the snow for fun. They're not taking a toddler for fun. There was a report that was out there, and I don't know if the minister saw it. A young toddler, 2-year-old, said to his mother that I can't go on anymore. It hurts too much. You go on to Canada on your own. This is not a joke. This is not something that you say, hey, this is normal. People don't do this unless if they feel the urgency and the desperation to do it. And that is the reality. So I would urge the minister to reconsider this. I want to ask the last question on transportation loans. The former minister said they would review this for all refugee claims. Nothing's come forward with respect to that. A quick update.
So, you didn't actually let me answer your question, the previous question.
Sorry, I'm asking this question.
So were you just making a statement?
Minister, there was a question, but unfortunately the time
Didn't get a chance to answer your question.
has run out for this round. There will be another round. Perhaps we can follow up on that question, that very specific question. Ms. Jurovich, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much, Minister. Thanks to the whole team for being here today. My first question is around the work for temporary foreign workers. In my riding of Davenport, I have a large number of union workers. Many of them are temporary foreign workers. They are mostly in the building trades, and they're very much here working on the infrastructure investment, that the heavy infrastructure investment that our government is implementing. Many of them have been here for a few years, and they're looking for pathways to citizenship so that their families can more fully contribute to Canada. I wonder if the minister can give us a very quick update just on, or just give us a sense about what is the timeline to putting a pathway to permanent residency or citizenship into place.
So one of the things that we have done as a government is getting rid of the 4-year in, 4-year out rule, which was very much an irritant to stakeholders and members, folks who had participated in the temporary foreign worker program. That's a key deliverable that we made, and we continue to look at this situation with an eye of creating pathways to permanent residency for these people. I don't have a specific timeline on this, but I can assure you that this is something that we're working on, and that we feel very strongly that we should have pathways to permanent residency for these individuals.
Thank you. My next question is, and I'll follow up a little bit on this 6,000, I always thought it was 6,000 legacy cases or 6,500. I have 2 wonderful refugee houses in my riding that are huge advocates around legacy refugees, so Adam House and FCJ. And I know we talked a little bit about efficiencies, Minister. I wonder whether you could let us know if there's a commitment to processing these legacy cases during this mandate.
So asylum reform, and included in that is addressing this legacy backlog. It's a very important matter that is within the line item within my mandate letter for asylum reform. The IRB is already moving ahead with a lot of reforms and efficiencies within its system to address this particular issue and generally backlogs. Part of that will be a need for resources, extra resources, so that they can process even faster, many more cases. That is certainly something that we're looking at in order to assist them to do that. And we work very closely with them. I meet with the chair of the IRB very frequently to follow up on some of the work that they're doing to tackle the backlog in general, but specifically the legacy cases.
Thank you. My next question, many people don't know this, but my mom's actually from Mexico, so I consider myself a Mexican Canadian, and I'm very proud that we have lifted the Mexican visa. Minister, I know that Mr. Wex, in response to an earlier question around the $261 million cost to government to lift the visa over 10 years, I wonder if I could get Mr. Wex just to finish off his answer in terms of the benefits, just because I felt I didn't get a complete answer around that. And to me, that's very important, because this is something that is a point of pride for me, and I'm very proud that Canada has done this. And I do think it is very beneficial for Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the member's question. What I was proposing to say is that while there are net costs that have been included in the lift, they are offset by some monetized benefits, which is essentially $172 million over 10 years. That's related primarily to increased tourism, which was easier to forecast than some other quantifiable or non-quantifiable benefits, such as, for example, increased trade and investment, business-to-business and people-to-people ties. And quite frankly, this was a major political irritant between the two countries. And so there were a number of indirect benefits once that political irritant was able to be resolved. So when you factor all those things in together, they add to the benefits, but we were not able to cost those benefits for the purposes of the regulatory impact assessment, which the member previously was referring to when referring to the operational costs associated with the lifting of the visa.
Appreciate that. My next question is about settlement agencies. I have a lot of settlement agencies in my community. I'm very anxious that they get the resources they need to be able to do their job, not only to settle refugees and immigrants as quickly as possible, but also help them to fully contribute back to Canada as soon as possible. I worry a little bit. Sometimes I wonder whether they have the resources they need in some areas, or whether they have too much in other areas. And I wonder if the minister can just update us on where his priority lies around settlement agencies. I know that 2/3 of our budget is actually spent on settlement agencies. Whether there's a bit of review that's going to be underway, whether we can make sure that they have the support that they need to not only to settle our new Canadians.
So on settlement, I can't agree with you more on the importance of settlement services for refugees, newcomers, and everyone who's new to Canada to restart their lives here. It's critical, the services that settlement agencies provide, language training, job support programs, and so on. And it is why we have, in 2017, we are allocating $664 million for settlement programs. That is outside of Quebec. That is an increase of $76 million over the previous year. It shows you that we take settlement services very seriously and is a key priority for our government. In addition to that, those extra resources, we are always looking to make sure that the delivery of those services have the best impacts for newcomers, for refugees. And the way we do that is to have a very rigorous data collection system, and we're implementing an improvement in that area. We also consult widely with the settlement agencies and other stakeholders in the settlement business. And so it's one area that we also work with provincial and territorial governments to have a better delivery in our system.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Soroy, 5 minutes, please.
Take 7, Mr. Chair.
You get 5.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister and the entire staff. And congratulations to the Minister coming to this promotion. Minister, last week we had an off week. This stuff coming, 5 questions, if you can squeeze them in 5, or coming from the people, not from me. The first question was, as you know, my riding is the most diverse riding in the country. 60% of the people are from the Chinese descent, and this question came from the people losing sleep on the border issues. Is there any way you can assure them that they are safe, the country is safe, and you have a plan, and how are you going to fix it, please?
So on general border questions, I usually defer to my colleague, Minister of Public Safety. But what I will say from my perspective and my responsibility is that we have international obligations to people who are seeking asylum. And our obligation is with respect to giving them a fair hearing so that they can make their case. But having said that, we have very rigorous standards for security screening for people who cross our borders. So they go through health, criminal, and background checks to make sure that anyone who's a threat to Canada is not let into this country. Having said that, folks who need protection, who claim asylum, we have international obligations that we can't simply walk away from. We have to maintain our tradition of being a compassionate country, and these are people who are in need of protection, and they get to make their case in front of the Immigration Refugee Board.
Minister, again, the second question came from one of my other constituents. This person have his networking contract in the United States. They also have a company. They do maintenance contract and software networking contract. He came to see me yesterday, and this was his question. He said, when I go across the border, I have all the client's information on my phone. What happens when the immigration officer asks my phone, look at the detail on the phone, and meantime, he's breaking the law, giving private information to the immigration officer? What should he do? If he said no to the guy, he'll be sent back. If he said yes, he's breaking the law.
It's a very important question. Unfortunately, it falls within the purview of the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Okay. In your Prime Minister's mandate letter, one of the things is in it to grow economy, create jobs, bring more people to the middle class families. Meantime, in 2016, the economic and business category was cut by 47%. Do we have a plan this year to bring it back to the 2015 level?
Under our levels plan for this year, we have 300,000 expected landings in 2017. The vast majority of those landings are in the economic class, 172,000 in the economic class. So that shows you that we have a particular focus on economic migration within our overall historically high levels plan.
Minister, I'm looking at the thing, according to from the immigration side, it was cut by 47%. But anyway, I can move on to the next question. The other question comes from the senior citizens who need a caregiver. He is having a rough time finding a caregiver. Do we have a plan to bring the caregiver program back to the 2015 level, please?
So, since 2014, historically high permanent residence admission levels have been in place for caregivers and their families. So this is a particular program that has had a lot of applications, and basically there is a backlog in this program. But I want to highlight for you two new streams within the caregiver program that allow for much faster processing of those applications. And I'll actually bring in my official Bobby.
10 seconds, Mr. Roy.
Well, yes, there are, as the Minister said, there are two new categories, the caring for children and high medical needs cases, and those applications are being processed for permanent residence within 3 months when they're applying at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Unfortunately, the time is up. Mr. Sarai, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Minister, for coming in on your first visit. We've been discussing this, and it's kind of common knowledge, but it's come up in our meetings as well, and I believe it was in our election platform, that siblings or those that immigrate to Canada, have an easier time integrating and settling with that if they have siblings here. It's been documented, as brought up by many witnesses in testimony. There was discussion that for economic class applicants, that if they have siblings or family members in Canada, they would get extra points in order for them to qualify. Has that been studied any further? Are there any plans in implementing that anytime soon?
I can't say that, there's no definite plan in place to implement that anytime soon, but we have been looking at that issue and receiving input from affected stakeholders. I can tell you it's something that I'm aware of prior to assuming this new role and subsequent to that, but there's no definite timeline in terms of an announcement and so on, but it's something that is being looked at carefully.
Thank you. In the main estimates, it includes an increase of $18.1 million to reduce application processing times and achieve higher admission levels for permanent residents. Budget 2016 included $25 million for reducing processing times for family sponsorships. What results were achieved with the money identified in Budget 2016?
Thank you for the question. I'll let my official answer that question.
Thank you, Minister. I'll turn it over to Mr. Orr in a moment. The $25 million from Budget 2016 was dedicated to attacking the inventory and reducing the processing time for the family class. At the time when this was announced, the processing times for family class, both within Canada and outside of Canada, in terms of sponsoring a spouse or a partner, was 26 months to, or 18 months to 26 months, respectively. Since that announcement, the previous minister announced in December of 2016 that those processing times will come down to 1 year. So for existing applications, they will be completed by December of 2017, and for any new applications, they will be completed within 12 months. So the results achieved from the $25 million in Budget 2016 included two things: a major reduction in the inventory and significant improvement in processing times associated with spousal applications. Don't know if Mr. Orr would like to add anything.
Just very specifically on that, I think largely it's been covered. But since June 13th, when the announcement was made about spousal processing times, the inventory has been reduced of the in-Canada spouses by 49.3%, which is a very significant increase. And we're well on track to 12-month processing for 80% of cases by the end of the year.
Higher admission levels require increased spending on application processing and settlement services at IRCC, as well as costs for external partners. How much of the $18.1 million increase that was identified in the main estimates to support higher admission levels, and how is this funding going to be allocated?
Thank you for the question. In terms of the $18 million, I'll have my colleagues correct me if I'm wrong, but the $18 million was actually part of a 3-year investment starting in 2016 to deal with the 300,000 new admissions target. Specifically, the $18 million in the main estimates is going to be dedicated to settlement services as a result of the increase in the admission levels. There are additional monies in the mains of about $8 million that allows the department to ramp up to prepare itself operationally to admit the additional numbers in the 2017 levels plan.
There was an evaluation of the settlement program that has been underway by IRCC. How will the 2016-2017 settlement program evaluation inform the delivery of high-quality settlement services?
A 30-second answer,
yes,
please.
It'll really help us because we will be able to better measure outcomes, not just outputs, and see how we can deliver settlement services even better with more efficiency, more impact on newcomers. We think this is the way to go, and we believe that getting settlement services right is so critical for people to restart their lives well in Canada.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, in my writing, my office has been trying to assist a prominent and well-established group of constituents since 2012 with their application for a refugee family from Sudan. And the question is, why is the department telling us that there's an average 60-month processing time on refugee application when we know that 45,000 refugees were processed in mere months?
Thank you for the question. The issue of processing privately sponsored refugees or government-sponsored refugees, it always takes resources, it always takes time. I can tell you that the private-sponsored refugee allocation for 2017 is almost quadruple what existed in the past. That is to allow for us to reduce the backlog that exists within the private sponsorship of refugee backlog, but also allow more Canadians to bring in privately sponsored refugees.
I understand that, Mr. Minister, and the problem is the reputation that the department is getting is that some refugees are simply jumping the queue. You've given an answer to it, and I do understand it. I also know you probably don't want to discuss private applications in a public forum as this. I'm going to have my assistant give you a letter which we wrote you last month, and hopefully you and your assistants will look at it. Ms. Rempel has some questions for you.
Thank you. In the IRCC departmental plan, it's stated on page 23 that the department plans to implement changes to the Citizenship Act following royal assent of Bill C-6, including corresponding updates to the citizenship regulations. Can the minister describe what the corresponding updates to the citizenship regulations will be?
So on C6, we anticipate and we are hopeful that the Senate will pass C6 so that we can move very, very quickly on removing obstacles to citizenship brought in by C24. Whatever is in C6 that would require changes to the regulations is something that we will also move very quickly in concurrence.
I'm asking the minister there's a very technical statement on page 26 of your department's report. What are those changes and what are the anticipated costs?
I can't speak to the anticipated costs. What I can speak to you is that C6 remains a priority for us because it removes the obstacles to citizenship that were implemented by C24.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair.
Once we do that, we will be able to look at, once C6 passes, we will be able to look at whatever corresponding changes that we need to have.
I'm actually not asking about Bill C6, so just to clarify for the minister, and perhaps if his department officials would like to show him this, it says that following the royal assent of Bill C6, that there would be corresponding updates to the citizenship regulations. So can he please tell the committee what these updates would be?
Mr. Chair, we could follow up afterwards with respect to this question. Normally, after there is legislation, there are subsequent pieces of regulation to support the regulation or the legislation and give the legislation more, fill in the gaps and provide more detail. I'm not particularly aware of this issue, and I'd have to read it in context, and the department will be following up with the clerk accordingly.
So that's an undertaking by the department.
It is an undertaking, yes.
Thank you. Could the department officials give a cost estimate, a cost differential between a privately sponsored refugee that came in through the Syrian Refugee Initiative versus a government-sponsored refugee as it pertains to social assistance payments, language training services, if there's an actual cost differential between those two streams that has been done?
The cost for a government-assisted refugee normally costs around $25,000, $26,000 to the total cost, so it includes the settlement and the resettlement costs. And for privately sponsored, it costs around $13.5, so $13,000.
So with regard, so there's roughly a $10,000, $12,000 difference here. Why is the government focusing on government-sponsored refugees as opposed to clearing the backlog of privately sponsored refugees that are in the system right now? My understanding is that there's tens of thousands.
I don't agree with that assertion. We're doing both. We're resettling government-sponsored refugees, and we're doing PSRs as well.
On this particular round, Mr. Anandasangani. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Minister, very proud to see you in this new role, and I want to congratulate you and your family for this great responsibility. I know of all the immigration ministers, you probably appreciate this role in a very unique way. So thank you for your leadership on this, and also to your incredible staff in the Minister's office as well as your colleagues. A number of issues are currently brewing. I know one of the major issues that have come to our attention is the issue of legacy cases. And I want to see if you can maybe elaborate a bit on what the plan is for the 6,000 or so that are currently pending, and if you could maybe offer some options going forward.
So I will start the answer and also bring in my officials to give you even more detail on that. The asylum reform is a key part of my mandate letter. We have to reduce the backlog and work with the IRB to reduce the backlog generally of asylum claims, but also specifically on the issue of legacy refugees. These are individuals who have been in limbo for the last number of years through no fault of their own, and they need to have certainty with respect to their cases. And I have been working very closely with the chair of the IRB to make sure that we address this. Part of it is efficiencies and a faster processing and internal mechanisms within the IRB. But yes, there is definitely a request and a need for resources, and we're considering that within the overall framework of the budget. But I would also allow my officials to add some input into this.
I don't have much to add beyond what the Minister has said. I'll turn it over to Mr. Manicom if he wants to add anything, other than to say that this is a very serious issue, one that I know the Minister takes seriously, the Department takes seriously. We've discussed this with the Immigration Refugee Board. Proposals are under consideration, and at this time there's nothing further that we can share with this committee. That said, Mr. Manicom may want to fill in
Mr. Wex,
some
maybe
blanks.
if I could just probe a little bit further. Do we have any legal options with respect to procedural fairness with delays? Have we, has the department sought any advice on that, and maybe look at other options that the department has exercised in the past to clear backlogs of this nature?
Just very quickly, thank you for that question. With this particular cohort, we have looked at a variety of options, again, in collaboration with the IRB. And there are, as always, with tough challenges, numerous different types of policy responses, programmatic and policy responses, and legal approaches as well. And we are looking at the full range of options that are available to us.
Mr. Minister, I just want to bring to your attention the TRC call to action. And I would like to get a sense of timeline with respect to amending the citizenship oath.
So we moved very quickly on that. My department officials have met with all the major stakeholders within the indigenous community. They've met with the representative organization of the Inuit community, the Métis National Council, and the AIFN, and they've all indicated agreement with us on our proposed desire to move forward on revising the citizenship guide, but also the oath. I'm also meeting those stakeholders to do the same and have another meeting to make sure that they're all on board and they're in agreement with where we're heading on this. Once that happens, we'll move very quickly to introduce legislation to make that happen.
With respect to processing times, I know inland spousal was quite problematic when we took office. Can you maybe offer some timelines as to how we've improved the efficiency on that and other improvements since taking over government in October?
So I spoke about this earlier, but I'll let Bobby Orr talk.
Mr. Chair, I think there's been some very real success since the announcement on June 13th of a new process for the spousal process. We did a very fundamental review of the entire process, looking at the kits, the forms, the various aspects of it, the various steps that were involved. And so, as a result, we are bringing it well within the 12-month. We're well on track for that. And also, we brought down the inventory of cases in Canada.
Ms. Kwan, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. CCR actually made recommendations with respect to legacy claims to create a regulatory class for legacy claimants. Legacy claimants be landed if they apply and meet minimum requirements, i.e. have worked for 6 months or have been in some form of education for at least 6 months in Canada, and applicants for this class not be required to withdraw their claims. I just want to put this on the table for the government to consider and to move forward on it. I want to ask very quickly on the Safe Third Country Agreement piece. I see that in the supplemental estimates, there's $1.2 million to address, quote, irregular migration pressures as a result of lifting the visa requirements for Mexican nationals. In addition to that, there's a $5 million allocation to the IRB, mostly designated for, quote, funding to address irregular migration pressures as a result of the lifting of the visa requirements for citizens of Mexico. So on that question, given the Trump situation and the impacts for us at border communities, why is there no allocation for irregular migration pressures being put on our communities as a result of the Trump administration?
Thank you for the question. I'll let Mr. Mills answer that.
Okay, pour répondre à votre question, en ce qui a trait...
Well, to answer your question, the reason no supplementary monies are being asked for this is that Mr. Trump's new executive order has just been implemented, and the money that's being asked for in these estimates would be enough, according to our predictions, for the needs that currently exist. So we haven't yet estimated the amount that we will need.
Okay, well, then my follow-up question on that then to Mr. Mills is when will you have some estimates? Is your department undertaking that work right now to provide the estimates, and will you make that public?
En ce moment, nous considérons...
For now, we believe that the estimates we have and the money we're asking for is enough to meet the needs that we currently have. There aren't additional needs that have yet been identified for now.
The question, was that with respect to the department or the IRB?
IRB.
Okay, in terms of the IRB, okay, that's so that's not within the department's purview, of course. But to go to the member's question with respect to the IRB, as the minister previously said, the IRB is already facing a number of pressures, and recent events will only give rise to further pressures. And as we indicated earlier, this matter is under active consideration by the government, and when the government is in a position to share that information in terms of a decision, that will be made.
Well, thank you. I take that to mean that there's no allocation. That's what it means right now.
There is no allocation in the supplementary estimate C or in the mains.
Thank you.
With respect to your question.
Thank you.
Ms. Zaid, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Minister, for coming and appearing before the committee. And I would take this opportunity to congratulate you in your new role also. So my first question is in regards to the caregiver program. Minister, during the campaign, we made a number of commitments with regard to the caregiver community. And some of those commitments are reflected in your mandate letter also. I hear regularly from caregivers about their concerns, which include processing time for permanent residency and especially the time to be reunited with their families. So could you discuss your plan to fulfill your mandate letter's responsibilities with regards to the caregivers and the progress made in clearing the backlog in this category?
Perhaps I can respond to some of the points, and I'll just give you a few to situate the caregiver program. The department's currently on target very much to meet its 2017 targets, which will be 18,000 caregivers landed this year. Closing inventory at 2016 was 31,000 persons, and that's down from 57,000 at the end of 2014. So that represents a 46% reduction already. The processing times are very high, but that's because as we're processing very old cases, inevitably they've been sitting there that long, so that the processing times are very long. But in 2018, we expect to see a major drop in the applications. And in fact, those which are being submitted to us from 2015 onwards, the processing time is down to 12 months. The Minister also referred to the new programs which are in place with 3-month landing And eligible applicants in the larger living caregiver program inventory can indeed apply under the new program if they qualify, in which case their processing would be quite quick.
So is there any targeted date we can say that we can clear the backlog, which is now you mentioned that?
We continue to bring it down with high levels which are being assigned to this program. In 2018, we're going to see major advances, and particularly we will see the processing times come down because the oldest legacy cases within that category will have been dealt with.
Thank you. My next question is in regards to the supplementary estimates, C, that your department has budgeted $1.4 million for government advertising programs. Could you outline what programs are being advertised with this funding specifically, and if it is foreign or domestic advertising, and what the target audience are, and what advertising mediums are we using, are being employed?
Okay, so that's a great question. Some of that money went to help advertise and spread information with respect to the electronic travel authorization. As you know, the ETA has been very successfully implemented by our government, and part of that success is related to our ability to advertise it widely to the visa-free countries in Europe. And I actually personally saw some of the cards and the advertisements at various airports and travel agencies while I was traveling in Europe. The second advertising piece with respect to the 1.4 million is related to advertising for settlement services to potential clients so that they can access these services. You would agree with me that that's important for newcomers to access critical services for their success in Canada, and whatever we can do to facilitate their access to those services, we must do, and some of the advertising went to that, but definitely a lot of it went to also the ETA.
Thanks for that. And I totally agree with you that we need to inform the new immigrants what services are available. But specifically for this new immigrants, the funding which we are using, what are the ways? Is it in the newcomer package which they get, the advertisement is done, or are there any other ways also through which, are we doing it through the community papers or some ethnic newspapers?
There are a variety of ways in which this information was disseminated to newcomers. Ms. Edlund is motioning to me, so it sounds like she has some details. Or Mr. Mills. Mr. Mills.
La campagne de publicité domestique a été faite.
This publicity campaign was done in Canada, and it was done through social media, newspapers, and also on the radio. Those are the three media that were used.
Ethnic media, because I know a lot of newcomers who come rely more than the national or the local media on the ethnic media, and that's the newspapers they use and read, so I hope we use that. So my next question is also in regards to the supplementary estimates. There was a funding of $10 million for the interim federal health program, which provides temporary health insurance primarily to refugees and refugee claimants. So do you have the figures that how many beneficiaries used the interim federal health program in 2016-17 and in the year prior, and what is the projected budget for this program for the year 2017-18?
So we don't have the numbers of the individuals who actually, total number of people who use the program. We can certainly get that number to you. The 10 million addresses an increase in the number of people who've been using the program. The more asylum seekers you have, the more that program will be used. And so as the costs rise, we always have to go and get extra funding to address that gap.
No, I would just reiterate what the Minister has said. It's a quasi-statutory authority. It starts at about $50 million, and throughout the year we access additional funds as required, and that's what you see here reflected in the supplementary estimates. C is seeking access for an additional $10 million as a result of the volume of increased refugee asylum seekers.
20 seconds.
I will just make a quick statement rather than a question. there was a backlog of some 6,300 so-called legacy claimants in our asylum system, and you have touched on that, and some other colleagues have talked about it. But the volume of new asylum cases has been increasing sharply, and the people I have talked to have pointed to changes to the system made by the previous government, causing these cases to slip through the cracks. So I hope we will are actively engaging these people and trying to give them a fair hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Tilson, 7 minutes, please.
Yes, Mr. Minister, can you tell us the status of the visa lift for Bulgaria and Romania?
Mr. Chair, in terms of the status of the visa lift for Romania and Bulgaria, as announced, the visa lift for Romania and Bulgaria will come into effect on December 1 of 2017, but there is a phased lift to Romania and Bulgaria such that electronic travel authorization, an advanced form of electronic travel authorization effective May 1 will come into effect for so-called low-risk travelers from Romania and Bulgaria. They are defined as individuals who have had a Canadian visa over the past 10 years or currently have an American visa. Those so-called low-risk travelers will be able to get an electronic travel authorization as of May 1, and then the full lift will come into effect on December 1, 2017, as previously announced.
The reason I ask that, and obviously the question is the voting that's going to be going on with the member states, specifically with CETA, and are the Romanians and the Bulgarians happy with that, what you just said? In other words, will that help with the discussions that Romania and Bulgaria will be going on, presumably, in voting for provisions of CETA?
I can answer that.
I know that has to do with another department, but the visa issue is dependent on Bulgaria and Romania. How do I know that? Because they've told me that if the visa issue isn't resolved, they're not going to vote for CETA. So I'd like to know whether they're happy with that, Mr. Minister.
The way we've approached this is to have an assessment based on our relationship with both countries and with the European Union broadly. We didn't tie one to the other. We didn't tie the visa lift to CETA, but we have approached this issue as being one that should be looked at through the calculation of the importance of our relationship with both Bulgaria and Romania and with the European Union in general.
Well, it would be a shame if CETA is affected as a result of that voting. Mr. Minister, what is the status of the review of the visa policy framework? What is the status of the review of the visa policy framework?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. As the Minister indicated in his opening remarks, the Prime Minister in his mandate letter to the Minister asked that a review of the visa policy framework be undertaken, and that review is just being initiated. It is part of standard practice to, on a regular basis, take a look at the approach and the criteria and the manner in which we go about imposing or lifting visas, and that is what we will be undertaking over the course of the rest of this mandate.
How will it impact the situation with respect to Romania and Bulgaria?
Well, at the end of the day, although we'll take a look at the approach going forward with respect to the visa policy framework, decisions that have already been taken have been taken, and so I cannot see how the review of our approach to considering visa lifts or the imposition of visas would have any impact on decisions that have been taken by the government with respect to the lifting of the visas for Bulgaria or Romania.
Mr. Chairman, a number of items from the Minister's predecessor's mandate letter went unfulfilled, including the establishing of an expert human rights panel on designated countries of origin, reforms related to caregivers with respect to eliminating the $1,000 labor market impact assessment, and organizing a system of regulated companies to hire caregivers on behalf of families. Are you able to tell us, Mr. Minister, why these were not achieved?
First of all, just as a major point of clarification, any item that was in my predecessor's mandate letter remains a priority for me and for my department. I just want to clarify that. On the DCO countries, we just discussed that matter is still under review. And when it comes to caregivers, the lead ministry is ESDC. We obviously have a role to play in that file, but my department official has just spoken to you about the two new categories under the caregiver program that has resulted in processing times of 3 months or less. And we're obviously attacking the backlog from the existing caregiver program. So that's my response to your question.
So you're working on it?
Yes, and all the items in the previous mandate letter continue to be important to us. We haven't abandoned anything.
With respect to the 2017 levels plan, how has the department been coping with the existing backlogs already in the system?
Can I ask if you can be more specific? Backlog in which stream of immigration?
All streams.
Okay. We have, I'll let my officials be more specific than I can, but I can tell you that there has been a lot of success in some of the streams in not only reducing, but sometimes dramatically reducing the processing times and the backlog and the inventories. But for the remaining streams that have backlogs and issues around volume, that's also ongoing work. So it's there's been a lot of success, dramatic reductions, but also continuing to attack the existing inventory. 20 seconds.
Welcome to the committee, Mr. Minister. I hope you're enjoying yourself today.
I am now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Kwan, 7 minutes, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to follow up on a budget question with respect to the Living Care Workers Program, those that are actually in the system waiting for years and years and years for the application to be processed. Your predecessor, Minister, had said that the $25 million allocated for processing spousal and fast-tracking spousal applications, none of that money will be allocated for the Living Care Program. Not 1 cent of it. And so is there any money in the budget here that would, in the supplementary, because I don't see it, and I don't see it in the main estimates as well, that would put special allocation of dollars to deal with the backlog, not the new applications, but the backlog of the people who's waiting, in some cases, 10 years to be reunited with their children?
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can respond to that. The fact that the levels have gone up to 300,000 and includes a significant number for living caregivers of 18,000 being the target for this year indicates, and some of that money does indeed come out of this, the money which is being discussed today. So that allows us to move forward and to reduce the backlog. As I've said, the backlog has come down 46%. Since the end of 2014, and with the continued high levels, we continue to bring it down.
So if I could then interrupt, how much money is being dedicated to reduce the backlog? And that's additional money then, if I could have that specific figure.
I can answer that question. Part of reducing backlogs and providing resources is to create allocations. Those allocations come with a resource commitment from our part, so with higher levels comes more expenditure. That tells you that those extra allocations means we are prepared to put resources behind it. I can't give you a specific figure, but I can tell you that it is a priority for us, and we are tackling the backlog. And the new streams are resulting in much
well, thank you, Minister. With the exception, though, that for spousal sponsorship, there's a dedicated amount of new monies put to it. Your predecessor stated as much, $25 million gone into it. In this stream, I don't see a line item that specifically says that. What you're talking about overall, I get it. Overall, that applies for everything. But there is no dedicated amount of money that is to deal with the backlog. And, I urge the Minister to talk to the families who are impacted by this. Families are breaking up because they are not reunited with their children and their spouses. And why? Because they've come here to take care of our children here in Canada. That is the reality. So I'll park that there. I'm going to move on to the Safe Third Country Agreement issue, back to this issue. And I wonder whether or not the department has undertaken a legal analysis with respect to the Safe Third Country Agreement. The law students on March 10th, a report was done by 845 of Canada's law students from 22 Canadian law schools across the country, involving 3,143 hours of legal research, which they released their conclusion, and it states that the Safe Third Country Agreement needs to be suspended. And then they go on to say that that Canada is in breach of the Canadian Charter as well, and that it violates the fundamental rights of asylum seekers who in Canada has refused in accordance with the agreement. This finding happens to match up with the Harvard Law School's finding with respect to that. And they raise a number of issues, including, and I say, and I will put this on the record, the report echoes Harvard's finding that the U.S. is in violation of the non-refoulement principle in the 1951 Refugee Convention. And the report further states, quote, the right to non-refoulement also falls under Canada's domestic obligations under Section 7 of the Charter, which guarantees the right to life, liberty, and security of people, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. And then they also state that this is also recognized by the Supreme Court. The report goes on to say that if asylum seekers denied based on the Safe Third Country Agreement, and the individual is, quote, refiled by the United States, Canada has committed indirect refoulement by refusing entry, end quote. The document goes on to raise that de facto the U.S. practice punitive detention for asylum seekers results in this. During this detention, asylum seekers are also subject to human rights violation and not given adequate access to legal counsel. This amounts to violation of the 1951 Refugee Convention. And as a result of all of this, it therefore is a violation of our own rights, Section 7 and 9 of the Canadian Charter. And to quote their document again, by returning asylum seekers coming from the United States to that country, the government of Canada is complicit and responsible for this mistreatment of refugees. Such actions in contravention of the Charter and therefore contrary to Canada's constitutional obligations toward asylum seekers. So my question, based on the legal arguments that's been advanced by both of these reports, has your department undertaken a legal opinion with respect to this? And if so, will you make that public?
First of all, our department, under the Safe Third Country Agreement, is always and regularly obligated to conduct a review of the United States compliance with that agreement. So that work is ongoing. UNHCR has looked at this agreement and says it still applies. The U.S. domestic asylum system remains in place. The executive order that you refer to is currently under litigation.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 minute. I don't mean to be rude, Minister. I got 1 minute left. My question is very specific. Has your department undertaken a legal opinion on the Safe Third Country Agreement in light of the Trump situation? And if so, will you make that legal opinion public?
So what I could say, Mr. Chair, is that the constitutionality of the Safe Third Country Agreement is actually under litigation challenge at the moment. We have live litigation cases before the federal court. And so, you know, we are working with our lawyers and our legal teams, but that would be covered by litigation privilege and solicitor-client privilege.
Safe by the courts, so you don't have to answer the
15
question.
seconds, please.
Then I think it's really important then for the minister to actually undertaking this work. Let me ask the minister these quick questions. Has the minister read the Harvard report as well as the report from the students?
Unfortunately, the time is up. Mr. Tabara, 7 minutes, please.
I was wondering if we can split our time 3
Absolutely.
ways. That's okay. I'll let Gary go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Tabara.
Sure, and the Sangani.
Keep practicing, Mr. Chair. Minister, I just want to be very clear. How many people have come to our border and been turned away because of the Safe Third Country rule?
can get you that. So we don't have the numbers to calculate that, but we can certainly get that information to you.
And do we have
I do have the numbers of claimants from that are through Manitoba, for example, or the overall inland claims and so on.
Sure. What are those numbers?
So from in Manitoba, for example, we've looked at 143 claims made by people who have irregularly crossed the border in February 2017. And of those, 65 are from Somalia, 60 are from Djibouti, and 5 are from Ghana, with the remainder from other countries. 49 of the 60 are U.S. visa holders, so these are not people who lived in the United States for a long time. They came to the U.S. with their understanding that Canada will be their destination. 97% of these people in this time period have spent less than 2 months in the United States. They're mainly males, and most of these people have not filed a U.S. asylum claim. So, so again, it puts into context the claim made by many that this is as a result of the new U.S. administration. In fact, the rise in asylum claims through the border has been going on since. There's been a small and steady increase since 2015, most of 2016. So this is definitely not specific to the incoming U.S. administration.
And do we have a sense of if any of those people were detained prior to their release?
I don't have those numbers. What I can tell you is that the process is you're processed by CBSA. You undergo background, criminal, and other checks. And if you're not a threat to Canadian society, you're released pending your hearing date. If you're considered a threat, then you actually get detained, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, continuing on with jobs and investment in the high-tech sector, I know I'm pushing this a lot, but I really want to focus on it, attracting investment. And just to give you a number here, Communitech has hired in the startup sector, in the high-tech sector, hired 2,782 new employees. I understand that we are developing a service channel to help attract investment to meet the needs of companies seeking to develop significant job-creating ventures in Canada. Can you just elaborate on that for me?
David Manicom would take that.
Sure. We're working closely with the new Invest in Canada office that's planned at Global Affairs, with provinces, territories, with sector councils such as Communitech and others, to develop a dedicated cadre of staff whose job will be to work with companies who are planning to invest in Canada or to upscale their operations in Canada, to sit down with them at the front end of the process to make sure that they have the staff they need to establish, ramp up, and make their operation in Canada flourish. So that's the concept. We'll work both with objective criteria on the amount of investment, but also with referral partners to make sure that those exciting companies that look small now but will become big later can also have the dedicated handling by our staff.
Thank you, and I'll be sharing the rest of the time with Randeep.
Thank you, Chair. It's in fluidity with that question. We've already, this government's already made a priority to attract talented workers to come to Canada. We talked about in the global strategy. The riding I represent is home to Surrey's Innovation Boulevard. It's in the last 90 days, over 22 companies, like Surrey's Safe Software company, have joined Surrey's new high-tech sector. I want to know, how are we making it easier to attract potential H-1N visa holders from the U.S. If there's a particular stream that makes it easy to attract them if they already have a U.S. H-1N visa, I believe?
We don't yet have a specific channel based on those who are currently in the United States. But certainly the global situation, whether it's the current context in the United States, whether it's Brexit discussions in Europe, whether it's a broad desire of professionals in countries around the world to look for a good place for they and their families to live, our focus is on rapid and predictable processing, a dedicated office to help companies navigate our processes, and a package of work permit exemptions for those who are coming for very short periods of time, which are often the crucial seed visits that will drive investment. So there's a package of services, as well as changes to our permanent resident programming through Express Entry to make sure that those who are adding to innovation and growth in Canada and wish to stay permanently have a fast pathway to do so.
You know, do you have a mechanism to deal with it for those that are work permit exempt, for them to get extensions, short extensions? What I anticipate, as all of us members of Parliament here, immigration is a big concert of our work, and those that are coming in for 30 days, if they need another 15 days or 30 days, an expedited process to just alleviate a lot of bureaucratic red tape. But if they could extension, not
20
not
seconds,
years,
please.
but short terms.
The dedicated service channels right now apply to initial entry. My colleague, Mr. Orr, and his team work to ensure that we do the work permit extensions quickly, not through what we would call bureaucratic red tape, but to make sure that our rules are followed and that those who genuinely have an extension to their contract can stay.
Thank you. Mr. Soroy, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Mr. Minister. Coming from the community, you and I worked with the community long before we become MPs. This is the habits we developed over the years. Regarding the client services, as you know, how much our money get spent on the immigration files on the daily basis. If you talk to one client or you talk to 50 clients, the answer is basically same thing. They probably tell you the same thing. The process is taking too long, unsatisfactory answers, dropping the phone calls, and let's go on, so on. What can you tell them, Minister? What have you done to improve this one? And is there any something coming soon?
Yes, so thank you. That's a really great question. Client service is not just about faster processing and reducing backlogs or eliminating them. It's also about how we interact with people, how the immigration system deals with the client in terms of how they feel after going through a phone call, or how do they find the complexity of the forms, the website, and so on. So all those things are on the table with respect to client service. So it's not just a question of processing times and backlogs. So it is our focus, and we meet frequently about this. I get weekly updates on the progress we're making with respect to client service.
Through Mr. Chair, to the Minister, we talked about the crooked consultants, and we hear the horror stories. And I personally want you to watch one of the video I'm going to give you to how people get ripped off, and they're talking about committing suicide and things and so on. I think many of us believe if the application is made easier to fill it, people can do it themselves. But because it is the application is a bit harder, so they end up going to the crooked consultant, and this is where they get ripped off. Is there any way we can shorten it, or something can be done?
Doing something with respect to lessening the complexity and making it easier to use for forms, the website, the phone, the 1-800 number. That is absolutely part of our focus, making sure that that not only is it easier to use the various the various aspects of the immigration system, but also having the client once they interact with the system feel much better than they did coming in, and that means putting them first, putting the client central to everything that we do. Does that mean faster processing times? Absolutely. Does that mean reducing wait times? It also includes, some people don't mind waiting a little bit longer if they know what the status of their file is. That may also include, therefore, communicating more regularly with the client and letting them know the progress of their file.
Time to time, we hear this on the regular basis. People do make a mistake, people who fill their own applications. They're trying to save $1,000, whatever the cost is. And anytime, we brought this question many times in the last committees, if there is a smaller issue, date of birth is filled up wrong in one spot, filled up on the wrong spot on the other thing, or something minor variances, why can't we call or email the client to say, hey, listen, fix this thing in some shorter window?
Mr. Chair, we're making very real efforts so that we're not rejecting applications for minor issues of that nature. We're also getting better at communicating with our clients, be it by email, be it by phone, or face-to-face interviews, indeed. We're also using technology more effectively because many applications which are not electronically lodged, we do have now a mechanism people can register, and then they can submit applicants or submit supplementary material very rapidly. This is making the turnaround for applications much, much faster, and it's growing, but we're seeing very positive results from that.
20 seconds.
One last question. Maybe you can make it shorter answer. According to the news, most of the people crossing the Canadian border, they get the visa from Saudi Arabia, they come to the U.S., and then they come across. In other words, they are breaking the queue, breaking the line. Is there any truth to it or anything we can do?
Quick response.
There is data, especially on the Quebec side, Lacolle crossing. There is data that suggests that a substantial number of the people coming through Lacolle do possess valid U.S. visas. That is definitely a concern for us, and it shows us that there needs to be more conversations to be had with our American counterparts to address that particular issue.
Thank you. Ms. Jurovich.
Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you so much for your perseverance today and your patience. I have a couple questions. One of the key things that always puzzles me in my writing is I have people coming and saying to me that when they're applying for permanent residency, they sometimes fail because the language level is too high. So it's, I think, at grade 5 level. And in past, it's been at grade 3 level. And I've thought about this. I thought, well, you know what? We want to keep it at a decent level because learning, understanding, and knowing to speak the language, both either in French or English, is a key measure of success in this country. And so it's made me think a little bit about settlement agencies and its basic capacity to sort of help us settle our new Canadians or permanent residents. So my question to you is, and it's an extension of what I started with before, how are we ensuring that the settlement agencies are now delivering the programs that are needed to settle either refugees or to settle our new immigrants? Do we have a way of evaluating success? And then do we have a special evaluation of ESL classes? Just because I have, in my writing, they're hard workers. So they're working, if they're temporary foreign workers, they want to become permanent residents, but some of them are just not able to pass that test because they're working, and I'm not quite sure whether those services are available to them. And I wonder if you might have an answer to that for me.
Just as a point of clarification, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware of the test being at the grade 3 level.
Yeah.
I think that's too low. I'm not.
And when I say grade 3, there might be a different evaluation. So it might be level 5 versus level 3. So I might be saying it incorrectly.
Right. So a number of things. Language training is critical to integration, but also to access to jobs for newcomers, whether they be refugees or immigrants. And we have actually invested a substantial number of resources to make sure that there's enough language training spaces for people who need them, and we'll continue to do so. Since April 2016, we've created 7,000 new spaces for language training. We have an evaluation coming up in the spring on the effectiveness and the availability of these language training facilities. I agree with you that language training is key to integration, and if Dawn Edlund can also add some remarks for that.
I would just add, for the situation of a temporary foreign worker, we're not able to offer them our funded language training because it's not part of our terms and conditions, the criteria under which we run our programming. However, some provinces and territories do provide their own language training that would then help. So it's complementary to our language training, but it's done under their own funding. So sometimes it's the province or territory themselves. I know Ontario, for example, has some funding that goes to temporary foreign workers, and municipalities do, and sometimes voluntary church groups. But for TFWs themselves, they can't get our language training under our programming.
Thank you. That actually might be where the issue is. And then, Minister, this was one of the questions that one of my colleagues across the way asked earlier, but I wonder if you might elaborate a little bit on it, just because if the public heard this, they might not have the whole story. You had mentioned, there was a question around what percentage or how many of the Syrian refugees have found jobs. So you had mentioned around 10% of the GORs have found jobs, and about 53% of the private-sponsored refugees have found jobs. And you said that that's pretty much in line with what's normal in terms of immigration waves. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on that, just because I think that would give, comfort to the public, comfort to us that this is just part of the process, and maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yes. Previous data suggests that in comparison with Syrian refugees, where they are at now in terms of their journey of integration is exactly where other refugees were in the same time period of their presence in Canada. If you look at previous waves of refugees, privately sponsored refugees always tend to do better faster than government-assisted refugees, but the data also suggests that at the 10-year mark, the two converge and then usually become the same in terms of their access. So it's nothing unusual to find those numbers, but it goes back to the point about settlement services being key to allowing these new refugees and other newcomers to restart their lives in Canada and succeed.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. One of the most popular questions that members of Parliament get is the topic of status updates. They're having trouble getting status updates, and our recent study on client service modernization revealed some serious shortcomings exhibited by the department on terms of communicating with its client base. And most of the complaints we heard, that the committee heard, were about how hard it was to obtain status updates. And of course, that leads when they don't get them, the constituents contact us, members of Parliament, to get answers for them. Can you, Minister, give us some concrete actions that you and the department are taking on trying to improve this situation?
Very quickly, I'll start by saying that myself and my minister's office staff are very, very quick and responsive to members of Parliament when they approach them. I understand that not all requests that come to members of Parliament are based on a lack of communication from my department. It's mainly to do with constituents seeking MPs to seek intervention from the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. On what we have done and what we intend to do in terms of processing times and communication, I'll leave that to Mr. Orr.
I'm just telling you, Mr. Minister, that in my office, other members can speak for themselves, that's not true. Constituents in my Dufferin-Caledon, at least, simply are not getting status updates. So I appreciate what you're trying to say, but I'm throwing it back to you as to what we get when people come into our office or on the telephone.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I could just point to three things. First of all, faster processing times will hopefully lead to fewer needs for status updates. The second point is that we're putting more and more information online so that clients are able to go online and get a better status of what's going on. That's still very much a work in progress, but that's improving quite significantly, and there's a lot of effort going into that. The third thing I would say is there's been a major reworking at the call center so that we're able to respond, provide better information to clients when they do contact us. Frankly, just the tone is more welcoming and helpful to our clients.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question with respect to the Syrian refugee issue. It's being reported, and this is covered to some degree by previous questions and comments that you made, but it's been reported that the costs for the Syrian refugee initiatives are soaring significantly beyond the funding allocated for last year. We are well past month 13 for the bulk of the arrivals, and I know you're talking about privately sponsored versus government sponsored. I appreciate that. But the provinces are under significant strain in terms of providing the services they're mandated to. It's even difficult for municipalities and the settlement agencies. Housing is stretched to the limit. Many of the arrivals have yet to find employment or enroll in language training. So I'd like to comment on this. I mean, it's fine to say, oh well, it's the problems of the provinces now and the problems of the municipalities. Well, they don't like that very well. I think that for political reasons or other reasons, humanitarian reasons, the government brought over 45,000 Syrian refugees, and there's now a problem.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, I want to communicate to the honourable member that I disagree with the premise of the question. The Syrian refugees who are resettled in Canada are progressing in their journey of integration in the same way that other refugees have done. There's always growing pains with respect to starting a new life in Canada, especially when you don't have proficiency in one of the official languages. But we in the federal side are very dedicated to ensuring that people succeed in Canada, all newcomers, including refugees, and that is why we've spent a record amount of money in settlement. We are spending a record amount of money in settlement for 2017, $664 million outside Quebec, $76 million more, 7,000 new language spaces. And when it comes to provinces, we're not abandoning provinces. We do provide funding under the Canada Social Transfer in the billions of dollars for those costs, and those are based on populations, including asylum seekers. And we've also provided $504 million for housing.
Thank you, Minister.
Shelters, sorry.
And with that, we conclude our round of questioning, and we will move to the votes. Votes 1, 5, and 10 under Citizenship and Immigration, and vote 1 under Immigration and Refugee Board. Shall vote 1 under Citizenship and Immigration carry? Carry. Shall vote 5 under Citizenship and Immigration carry? Carry. Shall vote 10 under Citizenship and Immigration carry? Carry. Shall vote 1 under Immigration and Refugee Board carry? Carry. Shall I report the main estimates 2017-2018 to the House? Thank you. I'd like to thank the Minister and the department staff for appearing before our committee today, and I know that I speak on behalf of not just Mr. Tilson but everyone that we look forward to seeing the Minister before the committee in the not too distant future. Thank you, and with that,
thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
you.